All right, well, welcome everyone. It is noon on Monday, the second Monday of the month, and so we are back with our community lunch hour. I'm Jenny Riggenbach, CEO of the Community Foundation, and today I am joined by Ben Nusz and Sam Dinga to talk about DEI Applied, a conference that is being organized by Mid-State Technical College. Sam is also on the organizing committee of that. And this is something that the foundation actually provided a grant to last spring to help organize this. And so we're thrilled to have both Ben and Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Before we get started, I just wanted to give some credit to both the Delta Dental Foundation, Century Insurance Foundation, and UWSP's MBA program for sponsoring our community lunch hours and helping to bring them to you. I know Kai Ying, I just want to give some credit to Kai Ying. She is really helping us to increase our reach with these. So as our community storyteller, she's been writing a really nice blog that goes in conjunction with each one, along with getting it moved to YouTube. So these will all be available after the fact as well. So you can watch for that in your inbox. Kai Ying, is there anything else you wanted to make sure that we share before we get started?
Yeah, I would just add, in order to see the spotlight view that we feature, you can go ahead on the top right corner and go to speaker view, and that will enable you to see Sam and Jenny and Ben highlighted. And throughout this conversation, feel free to write any questions you might have in the chat or raise your hand to participate.
Great, thank you. Yes, and we definitely want this to be a dialogue, so don't hesitate. Well, I know you guys are old friends of the foundation, so I don't know how much we have to do in terms of introductions, but maybe just take a minute and give yourself an introduction in terms of how this conference has come together. Ben, do you want to start?
Sure thing. So we oftentimes talk about kind of our why. And why we wanted to put together a conference like this. And oftentimes for us, it starts with our data. And so Mid-State Technical College on an annual basis puts together an equity report. And we recognize and acknowledge that we have some consistent equity gaps in terms of the key things that we look at. We're oftentimes looking at retention, and we're looking at enrollments, and we're looking at graduation and course completion rates. And we notice that we have some unequal results, that certain populations don't graduate at the same rate and don't complete courses at the same rate. So we are really starting with that as kind of our why, that we recognize and acknowledge that we have equity gaps. And so we said, well, what do you do about it? And this conference is really about the how. And that's why we've titled it as DEI Applied, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Applied. It's about those actionable items around kind of identifying these gaps and then trying to solve them.
Wonderful, thanks, Ben. And we're going to get into some of those really fun tools that you've put together. But Sam, how about you? Why add this to your plate in terms of opportunities to volunteer in the community and be part of this organizing committee?
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for having me today again. So when I started my role about 3 years ago, Ben met with me and talked about setting up a conference. And at the time, the question was, why do it, and why the rush? And Ben's response was, why not? And that continued to stay with me. And being a new kid on the block at that time, I was not ready to set up a conference for the district. And I thought partnering with Mid-State would be a great way of doing it. And so not only at Mid-State, we did the same with UWSP. And so I stayed in contact with Ben to make this happen, and recruited a lot of partners. And we were intentional about doing a conference that goes beyond the EDI 101 and wanting to do something that folks can take and start applying in whatever capacity they have. And so our goal has been to build capacity, and we feel like this conference is designed intentionally. We recruited presenters and looked at the topics based on what can we do to start applying some of the skills that we continue to teach. We have done a lot of one-on-one in our community, and we feel like this is the time to start finding ways to apply some of those things. And like Ben said, we're looking at the data to make sure we back what we're doing. We're trying to answer questions based on what we're seeing with the data. So we are excited about this conference and looking forward to the presenters.
Great. Thanks, Sam. You know, hearing both of you discuss is just a great reminder of why the foundation is so proud to support this conference. You know, part of our goals as a community foundation is to just meet the changing needs of the community. And the more we're asking, the more we're leaning forward to understand how we might need to improve our policies and practices as an organization so that we are approachable and accessible to all types of donors and all types of people that might, or organizations that might need support. You know, that learning and examining is that next layer. So this is exciting. Ben, do you want to give us a sense of what attendees can expect? And maybe we should talk about when this is.
Sure. So let's we'll do the when and where. So yeah, so it's an in-person conference on January 11th and 12th on the Stevens Point campus. It is a two-day event. It's more like a day and a half. So we'll get started right away on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock with registration. We'll have some opening remarks. And then we actually dive right into it right away with our keynote address. And we've actually asked for a slightly different keynote. It's more of a pre-note and a post-note. So our keynote speaker, Dr. Michaela Brown, who we're really excited to bring in, she used to head up the DEI certificate program at eCornell, which is one of the larger ones that's in the country. And she's currently the vice chancellor of people and culture in a community college in California, does a lot of this work. And then also organizes a group called The Seat, where she coaches DEI practitioners and works specifically with businesses to kind of work through some of these in-person and active strategies. But we've asked her to actually deliver two keynotes. So the first one really sets the stage, talks about the why, talks about some of the processes. But then she will come back and actually close the conference. So she opens it, we do a bunch of work, she comes back and she closes it again to really talk about those next steps. So when we say applied, we're talking about action. We're talking about individual commitments that we are making and organizational commitments that we're making. And we wanted a keynote to reflect that. She's also committed to being there and to being engaged throughout the process. So she's not going to fly in, give an address, and then leave. She's going to be there and participate with our community.
That sounds wonderful. And she's coming to Wisconsin in January. That's even better. So,
yeah.
Need to come.
Fingers crossed for good weather.
Hey, Jenny, remember I came to Wisconsin from Africa in January, so she can do it.
And you're still here. And you're still
I'm still here.
Here we go. That's great. You know, but Ben, it also, I think you mentioned when we first started that, you know, Midstate is looking at data, right? And you talked about some of those equity gaps. And that might be a really good segue if we could talk a little bit about how you've organized this conference to really think about what that is, what that why is. Why do we do this? What are we looking for? What's the problem we're solving? And how you kind of structured the day and a half so that we can get to the end and have Michaela kind of wrap things up for us and give us some next steps.
Yeah. You want to dig into a few of those sessions?
That would be great.
You know, yeah, one of the highlights, and we actually have the pleasure of having a few of our presenters that were on this call. I did see Sammy in here, and I did see Dr. Marcus Lewis at a point. So we have some of our great presenters that are here. I'm going to get my screen so I can share. We put out a call for presenters, and we're just amazed with the sessions that we got. And I'm gonna just highlight a few of the first ones. You should be able to share my screen or see my screen. What I like about right after the keynote is these first three sessions, and unfortunately you have to pick one of them, and this is the challenge that I have, is that I want to attend all of them, which is always a sign of a good conference. But what I like is the first three kind of highlight what we're after. So Kasha is going to come in and speak really about measuring inclusive education. So about how do we gather this data? How do we become data driven? Where do we find the data? And really, what do we do with it? Now, this is on our website, so we'll post the web link in the chat as well. But each one of these sessions, if you click on the little accordion, you can see the extended version of it, and really talking about data. So our first one with Kasha talks about data. Our second one talks about how to create an action plan. And then the third one talks about how to involve your community in this process and how to have conversations about it. But one of the other things about each of the sessions is we've asked for a different type of conference. We've asked for an action-oriented conference. So we've have each of our presenters providing us with learning objectives. And we've also asked them to not deliver, because each one of these sessions is 75 minutes, to not just talk at the audience for 75 minutes. It's about half presentation and half direct engagement and workshop style. So each of these are really mini workshops that we're asking. So Kasha will lead us off. So we talk about data. This next session is really about how to create an action plan, but also how to make sure you are asking the right stakeholders. So how do we gather information in creating that action plan? Because you don't want to just create an equity team or DEI team, and then they create their own action plan without gathering appropriate feedback. So this one from Sherry Simmons will be talking specifically about how to make sure we have the right people at the table. And this one I'm also excited about because you mentioned different types of audience, and this is one specifically with law enforcement. So Laurie Snyder is going to be presenting with Police Chief Aaron Goldstein and a couple of other officers about how to have some of these conversations, and they're going to share some specific experiences that they've had in the Fond du Lac Police Department and talk about the successes and challenges. So I bring those three up because I think that they're a great example of kind of the structure, but I have to also highlight this one because I think that this is really important for our community. Dr. Marcus Lewis is on how to become an effective white ally. And for me, I think that this is one that our communities, specifically needs to hear, how to move beyond just meaning good to actually doing good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ben, I think we could dig into a lot of these. I would love to come back to that one in a minute, but if we can go back to the data one for a second, hearing this is the example is maybe going to be focused on education, but will it be appropriate to also, like for maybe myself or someone from our team, like the data that we're looking at are data points from the life report. So 20% of people that were surveyed for the life report don't believe Portage County is an inclusive place to live.
Sure.
And 11% feel like they've experienced discrimination, and age being the number one within that. Will those be data points that if I brought to this conversation would help me do something with that in a more constructive way?
I think that there's going to be a lot of ways to apply this data. And some of it is about federally reported data. Some of it is how to find data that's already out there instead of necessarily generating your own data. Yeah.
Great. Oh, that's helpful. So it'll help give you a metric of maybe some metrics to consider for how to measure progress as you're kind of moving things. Great. Very good. Yes, and then as you're talking about the the idea of bringing this into the community. I think one of the things that is high on a lot of people's minds these days is are those people that are feeling alienated by DEI efforts, and how do they fit within this conversation? So could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Me or Sam?
Either one.
Oh.
I mean, I thought Sam was going to go, but
Well, I can. I thought you were still with Ben, but so one of the things that I kind of shared in the beginning was how intentional we were with how we selected the speakers for the presenters for this conference. And another component that we were very intentional about was making sure that we were not just education heavy, right? We wanted to make sure that folks from different businesses can take the knowledge that is shared at this conference and apply it to their different businesses. And the goal is, building that capacity and creating equity for the community as a whole, right? And so whatever data you're bringing to this conference to share and learn strategy, we're hoping that you can take that back to your different businesses, and that will help the community as a whole. And to answer your question directly, one of the challenges that we see is if you're not careful, you end up preaching to the choir, right? Same people attending same conferences, attending same presentations. And we are hoping, and really pushing different businesses to make sure they can send folks to attend this conference. We're hoping that both students can be part of these, teachers can be a part of these, businesses can be a part of these, and different folks, so that we're touching different quarters who can be involved at this conference and take it back to their different place of business, place of work. And again, the hope is as we continue to do this as a community, we grow as a community. If we see achievement gaps in the school district, we can ask, why are we experiencing these gaps? Maybe it's not just the education piece. Maybe there are things within our community. It can be our transportation system. It can be whatever inequities that exist in our community that might be affecting the education of the students. So to close those achievement gaps, we need to address the equity gaps. And so we're hoping we can, through this conference, build capacity and help different businesses to see how they can be a part of closing these equity gaps that is creating these achievement gaps in the school districts or at the university.
Thanks, Sam. We talk a lot about that, like what, addressing gaps, right? How will this conference give us actual tangible things that like put some sense of what do we mean when we say addressing, like those actionable types of progress that we can make, or actions that we can all take?
Well, I think the goal is through the structure of this conference and through what we've asked of presenters, is that each session leaves you with a to-do list or leaves you with some ideas in how to solve some of your own organizational challenges. And that's why we needed that breadth. We needed the breadth in each of the workshop sessions to have that opportunity to interact with the presenter, to have that opportunity to work with the other session attendees. And as Sam mentioned, we are seeing attendees kind of from across the board, that we have professionals, we have a lot of individuals that are working in maybe HR, organizational development. We have some DEI practitioners. We have a group of local leaders. So the Portage County Business Council leadership, Portage County entire class, all 30 of these emerging and developing and existing leaders in Portage County will be attending the conference as well. So we have a number of different organizations that are going to be represented in addition to students. And so we want these different audiences that are coming together to be able to share some of their examples.
Wow, that's wonderful. How many people, what is the max amount that you can have for the conference?
Yeah, we're designing it to be a modest sized conference of about 150. We can accept some additional participants from there, and we're on the way, but registration is certainly open.
Okay, great. Good to know. Can we talk a little bit more about the White Ally session? It's just reading that overview it was such a reminder to me of how important it is to be working through your own uncomfortable feelings about DEI, to be able to to be able to actually be someone in your community who can make your community better for everyone, right? And I think at the end of the day, most people, if not everyone, is seeking that. We are a very caring community. I see that every day of people coming in to the foundation and thinking about how they want to make a difference today and how they want to make a difference into the future. What can someone expect, and what should someone be prepared for with participating in a session like that?
Well, I don't want to put Dr. Marcus Lewis on the spot, but if he is interested, our presenter is on this call, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's certainly welcome to join this part.
Sure. So what you can expect is, I guess, pretty much what's on the website, but also it's going to be a frank conversation. You know, from my perspective as a DEI practitioner with over a decade in the field, as well as nearly 4 decades experience as a Black Native American man operating who grew up in rural West Central Wisconsin and gone to predominantly white institutions for all of my degrees. So I'm going to speak openly about the influence that race and the discomfort around talking about it has, and how white folk can be honest, really good allies. We're going to talk about things to avoid. We're going to talk about things to do. I'm going to ask questions like, what percentage of your life is influenced or impacted by race? We're going to have some open dialogue. It's going to be mildly uncomfortable for a little bit, but these are ultimately, it's kind of like lifting weights. You know, you have to tear that muscle in order for a stronger one to grow back on top of it. So also one of the advantages about talking about race in a supportive environment, we're also going to have some ground rules for engagement, but it becomes less scary the more you talk about it. It becomes less uncomfortable if you're willing to lean in and sit there for a bit. And so that's what we're going to do in a safe, supportive environment, in a environment grounded both by research as well as years and years of experience, and provide people some opportunities to share their personal stories, challenges, struggles, and so on. And so, yeah, looking forward to the dialogue. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
That's great. Really, thank you. It's that again, all these reminders of, you know, the heart of knowing is being exposed to how real people are impacted just by our everyday practices, but also by our individual behaviors. And I think that is something that when I first started to explore my role in racism and equity many years ago, it was very uncomfortable. But you're right, Marcus. The more you do it, the more you can that's what it takes to begin to address it. And I'm looking forward to that, even though I've done this before. It's such a rewarding experience to be able to be in space where you're trusted to be able to participate in a conversation like that. Wonderful.
Jenny, let me add and just share this resource with folks who might not have seen it before or be a part of it. The implicit association test. It is a free online tool that you can use. There's tons of different tests that you can take. It is shocking to anybody if it's your first time doing it. And I would encourage folks to check it out prior to attending Dr. Lewis's presentation. That could help some of the muscle tear, like he says. But it is a free tool that you can use online, the implicit association test.
Wonderful. If you're able to grab it while we're on, you could put it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll make sure everybody gets it afterwards, Sam.
Sure.
So I want to just encourage people that are on the call, if you have questions and you want to raise your hand and get into the conversation, or if you want to text something in the chat, please do so, and we'll get your questions answered. So is there another session that would be worth digging into a little bit more? We got one question here. Oh, there, it's from Sam. Great, thanks, Sam.
Yeah, so I do want to highlight first the kind of like top 3 themes that we're centering the conference around. So theme number 1 is acknowledging internal and organizational bias and equity gaps. And this speaks to what Sam had just shared. That's both internally, right? Internally and organizational. So identifying your own biases or your organizational equity gaps. So one is acknowledging those, right? One, where do I find the data? How do I acknowledge that to begin with? The second key theme is developing authentically inclusive spaces by addressing structural discrimination. And I do want to give just an example of that, even from Mid-State's own lens. So as I mentioned, we do our own equity report, and we find that we have fewer students of color that come to Mid-State. We find that we have fewer male students. We have fewer students that are economically disadvantaged, and that we have fewer first-generation students. And so when we compare those, each of those kind of represent gaps. And so when we look at that, we say we then have to ask why. And why do we have some of these gaps? Well, maybe it is something that is structural within our institution. And so we're evaluating our admissions process, right? Structural. So maybe it's a direct element, like that there's individuals that can't afford the application, the college application. It's a fee for it. So maybe that's a direct or structural element. But maybe it's something like cultural capital, that they don't have the awareness or not necessarily awareness, but willingness to come to college. And so one of the things that Mid-State has done is evaluate our application process. And the typical application is you complete the application, you do some standardized tests, you pay a fee, you send it in, and you wait to get your response. Well, this year, for 22 of the local high schools in our district, Mid-State has automatically admitted all of them. We basically said, no need to complete your application. You have been accepted. So it's a direct acceptance sort of process where we basically said, we're trying to remove that structural barrier to come to college, right? And so we view that as something like a structural inequity. And so I think that kind of highlights that second theme, right? How do we address structural discrimination or structural elements in an organization that lead to unequal outcomes? And then the final key theme is leading effective equity teams. So many DEI practitioners work with other individuals in your organization to do some of this work. How do we make those teams be effective, right? How do we make it more than just your diversity, team or your DEI club? How do you make those or assist those in being as effective as possible?
Oh, great. This is going to be a 2-day conference. What you just described, Ben, is something that it sounds like a journey Mid-State's been on for a number of years, would you say?
All are.
Yeah, right? Like this is also that the need to continue to do the work.
Yeah.
And it's almost never ending, right? Like the more we think about what we're measuring, how we're engaging with our communities, and how to continuously make improvements isn't going to happen in just a day and a half.
It's funny. It's funny you said do the work. That was our first working title for the conference. We're like, we want to have a conference that deals with these topics. Should we just call it do the work? Because that's what we want to do. We want to do the work.
Get it done.
How are you feeling like this is being received in the community?
I mean, we've received great feedback. We have a lot of partners, our partners in both the Stevens Point Area Public School District as part of the planning committee, in addition to Create Portage County. Yeah, so we're excited that we can have a community facing and community focused conference.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. Any other questions that other people have? Or Sam, are there points that you want to make sure that folks on this call really, as they're getting excited to block their day on January 11th and half of January 12th, help them make that decision?
Well, I think that question has always been, another conference, another summit, another whatever the case might be. I think we can never get enough of it. Conferences create awareness, and people come there to grab tools that they can use in their different areas. Unless you start looking inward, you might not see some of those things that we're talking about, some of the challenges or the iniquities that might exist within your organization. There are biases in organization, be it just based on time. As time goes on, things change, and you might be implementing policies that are biased to different groups who are part of your community. And so conferences are a great way to learn what's new, what's happening, what's changing, and be a part of the new wave. One of the stories that Ben was encouraging me to share, if I have the opportunity, and I think this will work, was I've always asked that question: what happened in 1981 when Justice O'Connor was appointed as the first female in the Supreme Court? When she showed up day one at work, was there a bathroom for her? There wasn't. They had to figure out where she can use the bathroom, and until that happened, it didn't occur to create a bathroom for somebody like that. I'm sure even the language at the time prior to her appointment, when you said Chief Justice, everybody knew you were talking about a male, right? And so we have to look at those languages. And I always know that conferences are a place where you come and get inspired, and you learn from other professionals. You polish and sharpen your sword, like Steve Harvey said. You get to resharpen your tools and take them back to your community. We are looking forward to this conference, hoping that it will be that, that conference that is not just a how-to, but what to do, and take something back into your different organizations. So I looking forward to seeing every one of you on camera. Want to see you at the conference. It's going to be exciting.
That's great. But that's a great story. It reminds me of when Gigi Stahl talked at our last community lunch hour when you were sharing about the school district. She just put it into those terms of, we often end up adjusting to obstacles versus fixing the crack in the sidewalk. And I'm not doing her quote justice, but it did resonate with me very much, right? Like Justice O'Connor could have probably had to, for a while, use a different bathroom until they solved the problem. And then look what happens, right? You start to then, someone recently asked me, like, what's the return on having, addressing these obstacles within the workplace, within the community? And honestly, in the workplace, there's beginning to be show data of increased productivity, right? Like, what happens when people see themselves reflected in leadership, reflected in decision making? They lean forward more, they engage more. I think we can all speak to moments in our lives where that, we all have that experience. So yes, it's wonderful that you were bringing this to Stephen's point. So I appreciate this very much. Anyone have any questions, burning questions for Ben or Sam? All right. Well, we don't want to give away the whole conference. We want you to come. Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about the Community Foundation support, and if people are in, and what the cost is for the conference?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one, I did post in the chat the link to the conference website, and also then another link specifically to the schedule, so you can dig into some of the rest of the sessions that are there. We have tried to make the conference as affordable as possible. So the conference is $175. There's a student rate for $75. we know affordability varies based on individuals. And so we did write a grant to the Community Foundation to be able to support some scholarships. So we do have some scholarship support. So if you know anyone that these are just needs-based, so you just have to say, I need scholarship, and we have got a slightly different application form for that. So thank you to the Community Foundation for supporting those that are in our community that want to attend. So those that want to or need to use the scholarship, there's another link that I just posted in there.
Great. Thanks, Ben. And thanks for making the barrier to apply very, very low. So that's important to us as well.
There's no additional essay that you have to write. If you have a need, then click on that link instead.
Great. Wonderful. Anything else happening at Midstate that we should chat about?
Oh, well, where do I start?
Yes, where do we start? We've got a little bit of time if you want to.
Yeah, so let me actually just share where the conference is going to be. So we are just in the final stages of completing construction on our lead center. And so the lead center is a location specifically for small conferences of this size and to support our business and leadership students. So typically, if you are, say, a welding student, you know just where to go. It's in the welding lab. But if you are a business or leadership student, they were just kind of dispersed through the classroom. So we've created a center specifically for leadership, and that's where this conference is going to be held. So LEAD is an acronym. It stands for Lead, Engage, Aspire, and Develop. And so we lead through our leadership and business programs. We engage through events and experience like this. We aspire through our K-12 partners and our aspiring leaders. And then we develop through professional development opportunities and continuing education. So it is right here on the Stevens Point campus. And this will be the inaugural event. So the first thing that we are going to host there.
Right downtown. Right downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ben, I don't know if it's worth sharing also that the last time we looked at those who have registered so far, we realized I think 80% or so, 85% were all folks outside of Portage County. And so we want to encourage folks here to register and participate at this conference.
Oh, that's
we're seeing folks from across the state looking at registrations from Fond du Lac and Madison and Milwaukee and Eau Claire and La Crosse. And as Sam said, we'd love to have more specifically from this community. We've brought in presenters from all over the place, but we really want as many members of Portage County and our direct community here as possible.
Wonderful. And the scholarships are available to people living in Portage or Waushara County, correct?
Right.
To encourage that. Spread the word about those, please, if you can help us with that. It's great. Anything else on the conference? All right. Well, Ben, how about do you want to talk a little bit about? I see Ricky Harry is on the call. Do you want to talk a little bit while we have a few minutes about the nonprofit certificate, which is making a return to?
Absolutely, yeah. So another great partnership that we have with the Community Foundation. We did a lunch hour on this. I might have been about a year and a half ago. And that is our Nonprofit Leadership Institute. So this is a course that's geared specifically for those that are working in nonprofits, and it is for new leaders, existing leaders, board members, emerging leaders, understand that kind of the unique elements of leading nonprofits. And so this is kind of a master class. So it meets every other Thursday night for a total of 8 sessions. We've tried to make it also as accessible as possible. We know if you are, say, a board member, you're already.
Uh-oh, Ben froze, but you're already engaged in a lot of things. We'll just fill in for him, Sam. And so it's really meant to be accessible to. Oh, there you go, Ben.
I'm back.
frozen. You're back. We tried to fill in a little bit for you on board members.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes. So if you're a board member, you're already quite busy. So again, we've made this so it's only every other week. It's Thursday nights. It's from 5:30 to 7:30. But it's another one of those opportunities to come together. So this is an in-person only class. We've held it here on the Stevens Point campus. The first time we had almost 30 students in it. The next time we had 25. So it's also a great opportunity to network and gain resources from the other nonprofit workers in the community. And I see, yeah, Ricky's on the call. Ricky Harry is our primary instructor, who knows a lot about leading nonprofits.
He does. Oh, Ricky just chatted. If you don't know Ricky, she's with Marshfield Clinic Foundation and has a lot of great experience both in central Wisconsin and Milwaukee, working for different nonprofits of lots of different sizes and variety. And happy to chat with anyone who's interested. So we'll make sure to get that information out to folks as well. Great.
And then in addition, the Community Foundation provides scholarship support to anyone that's living in Portage or Share County and is working for a nonprofit. Again, the process is easy. You say that you need it and complete a brief form. And I will pop the link to that in the chat as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you. You know, and part of our vision for, if you just need to say that you need it, is sometimes it's something that by the time you're done with it at the end, you're like, wow, I love that so much. I'm going to be able to make a donation to help support the next person. So we just recognize you just never know what is financially holding someone back from pulling the trigger to continue their education. And we want to make it as easy as possible to both take advantage of it, but then also give back if you can. Ben, anything, it's also for credit this semester. That's a little bit of a change. Is that anything anyone should know about or be curious about?
Yeah, so the Nonprofit Leadership Institute is the first class in the Nonprofit Leadership Certificate. So students would take this as it's a 1-credit class that's, like I said, offered in the evenings. I didn't tell you when it starts. It starts February 1st, by the way. And then those that want more, because oftentimes we find that individuals that are working for nonprofits need only a class or two. And oftentimes it's, I need a class on QuickBooks. I need a class on payroll, because those that, and Jenny can probably speak to this, those that are working or leading nonprofits have to wear many hats in that, because we tend to run pretty lean. And so that you can then carry on to complete the Nonprofit Leadership Certificate, which is the first 1-credit class, and then you select between a menu of other courses to complete 3 more 3-credit classes.
Right. So that's not a requirement. It's just a nice bonus to
nice bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today, and I really hope that we gave folks just enough of a flavor to feel like, yes, I would absolutely want to attend that mid-state conference on January 11th and 12th. And go ahead and register. It'll be great to see. I'm excited to see people from across the state, but I'll be most excited to see our friends and neighbors here in central Wisconsin. So thank you both again for doing this. Any final thoughts you want to share?
So I don't know if we have any folks from our law enforcement, but given that we have a session and there's going to be a law enforcement personality as part of the presenters, I'm hoping that we have, folks from our law enforcement community to be a part of it. I think there's a lot of work that we are hoping to continue to do with that community. There are conversations within our community about relationships between community members and law enforcement. So we're hoping that we start building this relationship and creating opportunities for us to learn from one another, figure out whatever gaps might be there, misunderstandings and strategies on working together. So looking forward to seeing folks from the law enforcement community being a part of this conference.
Thanks, Sam. It sounds like some great learning from a community that's already done it, which is always a powerful opportunity. It's not in theory, it's in practice. So,
Definitely.
how about you, Ben? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just I hope to see you all there. We're really excited, like I said, about the high quality presenters that we have here. And it's great to be able to bring this caliber to our community. So we want to share it with all of you.
Wonderful. Thank you both, and thanks again for doing this. We'll see
Thank
you on
you.
January 11th.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Jenny.
So, before we go, will we be able to talk about the next month's community lunch hour?
Oh, sure, Kayin, go ahead, please. Or would you like me to do that? So next month, sorry about that. Next month, we're going to be joined by Gretchen Hintz from Portage County. And for those of you that were at the Life Report rollout, Gretchen was on the committee, and just an incredible public health professional who is really going to help us dig into some of the data and impact around our mental health. It's probably very connected to this conversation here. So we hope that you can join us on Monday, January 8th for that conversation.